So, in my career as an orthopaedic surgeon, I have only ever had to amputate the limb of a child twice in the UK. In Gaza, there are 30 children every day who are losing a limb. There are over 30,000 dead children. Over 1,000 children under the age of 1 have died. So how can you conceptualise 30,000 children? Well, if you think that tomorrow I'm going to go to a janazah, a funeral for a child who's died in Gaza, and the day after I'm going to go to another funeral for a child who's died in Gaza, in order to attend the janazah, the funeral, for all of these children on consecutive days, it would take you 82 years. And what did our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak say? He said that a ceasefire was to no one's advantage. I disagree. In World War I, we would expect that 90% of the casualties would be military casualties wearing a uniform and 10 would be civilian. In Gaza, the vast majority of the casualties, over 95%, are civilians. This is a war crime. We've only been given information about the number of hospitals that there were in Gaza. There were 36 able to deal with trauma patients. There's only one hospital that can deal with multiple trauma patients at the moment. And there's a phrase that I'm going to introduce to you called disease and non-battle injuries. So if you have appendicitis in the UK, you go to the hospital, you might have your appendix out, and you will survive. If you're in Gaza where there are no hospitals, if you have appendicitis, you will die. If there's no clean water, you will die. If you have an infection and there are no antibiotics, you will die. So actually, there are a lot more who have died than the 50,000 that have died from the direct trauma. Probably 250,000 people have been killed. Hospital facilities have been demolished. This is a war crime. Medical assets are being targeted, so ambulances which are protected under international humanitarian law are being destroyed. Medical staff, as we've heard, are being targeted. Even foreign medical teams, and I'll come back to talk to you about this later. I actually worked with Dr. Adnan Bush in 2009 at Wafa Hospital. Wafa Hospital has been demolished. Dr. Adnan Bush was kidnapped by the occupying forces, he was tortured, he was raped, and he was murdered. This is a war crime. Now, in 2017, you'll remember that there was a bomb in Manchester, the Manchester Arena bombing, and I dealt with a lot of the casualties who were seriously injured. And it took Manchester Royal Infirmary 3 weeks from one bomb to return to normal function because it completely disrupted the hospital's function. That bomb was made in someone's kitchen. The bombs that follow in Gaza are engineered, they are scientifically designed to kill and to maim as many people as possible. So it makes you ask the question, well, if one bomb can disrupt the hospitals in Manchester so much, how do they manage when they have a bomb landing 4 or 5 times a day in any one area with massive casualties? And the answer is, they can't cope. Ambulances can't evacuate the injured because they're being attacked. The facilities are terrible. So this is actually the orthopaedic ward at Carnegie is after the hospital was attacked. Underneath, you'll see the refugees. So there were 20,000 refugees living in the grounds of the hospital because they thought that it was going to give them some kind of protection. In the middle of the night, tanks came and surrounded the hospital, and all 20,000 people had to flee with their children and whatever they could hold on to into the darkness. And the equipment that we are using is antiquated, which is why they need modern equipment to be taken in so that people can have what we might call modern treatments. And the types of injuries that we're seeing are terrible. So this is an 18-year-old girl who was sideswiped by a tank. devastating injury. All the skin was taken off the side of her leg, and unfortunately she died from the infection. Here's another 18-year-old who had a blast injury to both her legs. And it really surprised me how the age group that I was seeing were pretty much all 18 and under. There were so many children who were being injured. So this woman, in the UK, I knew that I could rebuild that leg, but I was told she can only have one operation because there were so many other people waiting, and we couldn't spend the time to rebuild her leg. She had the most basic surgery available. Here's another 18-year-old who has a large piece of metal shrapnel embedded within the leg. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to make difficult decisions. We have to decide who's going to be treated and who is going to be allowed to die. And the doctors in the hospital had to make a decision because their families were living in the hospital with them because they thought there was some safety. So when the hospital was attacked, the doctors had to decide, do we stay and carry on treating patients, or do we take our families and try and escape? And it's a decision that I really want to have to make. So limited painkillers, limited antibiotics, and limited anaesthetics. White phosphorus is also being used. The use of white phosphorus is a war crime. It continues to burn and people die in severe pain. The staff are being targeted. This is Dr. Khaled, who is a general surgeon at Khan Yunis Hospital. He was kidnapped, he was taken away, and we didn't see him for 6 months.